I think the first thing that I learned was how to open a room, which is a really important skill every DJ should know. I think in a lot of ways is a lost art nowadays. Pursuing this music career because it is something I love and is something I enjoy. It is important to keep in mind that it is a business. It does support me financially. There are other things I could do to support myself financially. And if I want to do music because I love it, I have to stay true to founding characteristics of who I am and what I think makes me feel good about pushing my music career. And that's a really important part of it, is being a part of the community. If you're wishing to grow your own brand and you're inside of a community, but you're existing outside of that community, you're not really gonna get the full picture of it. You're not really gonna be taking advantage of it as much as you can. It doesn't matter if I'm playing to 10 people or 1,000 people, as long as it's a good room with a decent sound system and a crowd who is there to dance and is there to enjoy themselves. That's all I care about.
Jack, thanks for coming over to Tiny Table Radio.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. How did your music career begin?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting story, kind of. I was working a different job. I was actually in the Army for 4 years.
Okay.
And I had just gotten out. It was May 2023. I had, like a lot of people around right after COVID, I had started DJing a little bit, messing around with my friends in like a basement. But I had a job and it was really just something I did on the side. And I got out of that job. I was taking some time off, so I moved to Montauk, New York, on the coast of Long Island. And this was right before Memorial Day in May of 2023. And long story short, my brother was working at a music venue, like bussing tables. And he was like, hey man, like they need an extra busser this weekend. Would you like to like come and bus tables with me and like make extra money? And I was like, well, why not? You make like really good money because it's such a busy weekend there. Long story short, I ended up bussing tables at that music venue for like a month. And one day when I was working a brunch shift, they had a brunch DJ who didn't show up. And the guy running the show was like, hey, do you want to like DJ? I mean, at this point I had literally DJ'd in front of like my 4 best friends and like one time at like a bar. And I was like, sure. And I went up there and DJ'd, and I guess I did okay. And then I ended up doing that a couple times over the course of the summer. To be honest with you, I didn't really like think anything of it at the time. I was kind of just doing it for fun. And then slowly over time, I kind of started to throw my own parties a little bit and started to realize how much I enjoyed music and how much I enjoyed sharing my music with other people. And just kind of naturally developed into something that I started doing like full time, honestly.
Man, that's crazy. And what a quick trajectory too.
Yeah, it wasn't planned at all. It wasn't like something I was like, oh, okay, this is like the start of my career. I was like, oh, this is just something I'm like, I was just happy to like be doing something else in life and like having a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
Basically what happened is I was working at that venue, and then at the end of the summer, the guy who was running the full show, he had a wedding, and he was like, hey, can you like be the talent coordinator for the weekend while I'm gone? And I was like, sure. And I ended up doing it, and I guess the boss liked me, and I did it like a couple times that summer. And then I was traveling in Asia in like October, and I got a call and they asked me to come run the talent for their venue in Aspen. And then I ended up being a talent coordinator and production manager for like a year and a half. And then just this last fall of 2025, 2024, I transitioned into doing music like full time and started really pushing my career as something that was my priority. So.
Wow, things just kind of like happened as they were meant to.
I think that's like really common with people. Like, look, there are exceptions. There are people who like are born knowing they're supposed to be some type of musician or but I think a lot of these careers just kind of happen organically, and it's like, it just kind of, you got to go with the flow and just do what feels right to you at the time.
Going back to that first emergency gig, did you have a lot of songs already on
I think
USB,
I had 150 songs on my USB, which is like nothing. It's like I was like mostly like disco and stuff like that. And I definitely was not super prepared. I think it was like the second time I ever played on like actual, CDJ equipment and not just like my board that I have at home.
Yeah. How'd it go?
It went all right. To like someone who's a DJ, they probably would have been like, oh, this guy's like pretty new. But like to the average person, probably was okay.
Yeah. It sounds like you kind of started out in the music industry sort of as like, you know, booking talent and like
Yeah.
kind of being behind the scenes a little bit, but also still playing?
Yeah. So like my role was kind of both. It was, I guess you would call, I was like the resident DJ at that venue
Okay.
for at least during my later tenure with them. I was the resident DJ and I was the talent coordinator, and I did production and booked openers and other talent like that. So
Okay.
kind of like an all-encompassing role.
Nice. Was there like a moment during that phase where you were like, okay, I want to step into actually like performing and making my own music?
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up as a drummer. I grew up on the East Coast, so like I didn't even really get into house music until I was like a later teenager when I moved out to the West Coast. But I grew up on, my dad like loved the Chemical Brothers and Alt J and like people like the Crystal Method, which 99% of people have probably never heard of. But this is all like 90s techno, and my dad was obsessed with that stuff. So I grew up listening to it, but it was still always kind of just something I listened to on the side. And then later on, I just ended up, you know, realizing the connection that I had with electronic music and how it made me feel. So then when I started, I think it was that winter, the winter of 2023/4, when I was running the venue in Aspen, Colorado, and I was playing a lot more shows. You know, I was probably playing 10 shows a week. And, you know, some of them were just, you know, playing in a restaurant. Some of them were like proper club shows. And that's when I really started to develop myself as an artist, develop myself as a DJ, as a curator, as a selector. And I think that was around the time where I decided that I really wanted to pursue this as a career.
What did you learn that felt like gave you an advantage as, you know, a talent liaison and a booker and kind of a curator?
So a lot, so much. I mean, I think the first thing that I learned was how to open a room, which is a really important skill every DJ should know. And I think in a lot of ways is a lost art nowadays, truthfully.
Yeah. We'll pin that.
Yeah, so because this is the thing, right? Like I was a hired DJ at this venue, but also I was an employee at this venue. So my boss was always in the room or around the venue, watching, listening, you know, making sure I was doing a good job. And I also was opening for some like really, really big DJs. I was just lucky that I was like the resident DJ, and I got to open for some talent that I really, really look up to.
Yeah.
So I learned how to put ego aside and just understand that, like, hey, when I'm opening this room, these people aren't coming to see Jasa play. They aren't coming to see me play. They're coming to the venue to either, you know, enjoy the venue or to see the main artist. And it is my job to bring the room to a point where the room is ready to receive the main artist. And I think I learned how to really properly open a room of any kind, because I was opening for such a wide array of artists. Like I wasn't just opening for the type of artist that I resonate with. I was opening with artists for so many different kinds. So that's one thing. I really learned how to put ego aside and open a room properly, which I think is a really important skill. The second thing I learned was honestly just the technical side. It was amazing to be exposed to a proper club setup on a daily basis. I was the one setting up the CDJs, setting up the mixer. I was the one doing sound check with the sound team. So you learn a lot of the technical side of it, and then you also just get good on your equipment. It's like an instrument. You know, I always say that the mixers and the CDJ, even though a lot of people look at it as just like these things you press play on, they are instruments of a sense. And knowing them in and out and knowing the technical side of them, and then also just using them every day and getting that muscle memory is something that is invaluable and really, really, really expanded my ability to be a good DJ. And I think the last thing was that I just expanded my knowledge of music. Because I was opening for so many different types of artists, I was constantly researching and studying for my roles, for my opening sets, and I really expanded my musical knowledge of all different genres. So
Yeah. Do you feel like that exposure kind of gave you sounds that you might not have otherwise started to incorporate when you started producing your own tracks?
Definitely, yeah, for sure. I think every artist along the path of their career is just like how you are in normal life. You're always affected by the people and the factors around you. So I definitely think that a lot of the artists that I was opening for and a lot of the artists that I was surrounded by at the time were huge influences in like how I kind of started to build my own persona as an artist and my own sound as an artist for sure.
So when did you start producing?
It's a tough question to answer. I think I started like literally. I think I started like I got like a
I want the
native.
day, the minute, the hour.
Yeah,
No.
I got like a Native Instruments board.
Okay.
In like 2023.
Okay.
But you know, I wasn't even using like the proper. You know, I wasn't using the proper systems. I was really just like kind of messing around with making sounds. I think around that time, I think it was like the late fall, early winter of 2023/4 was when I started producing and started really like treating it like something I had to learn. And I was watching YouTube videos and teaching myself. But it really wasn't, honestly, at the time I'm still working 50, sometimes 60-hour weeks. So I was lucky if I got in a couple hours a week.
Yeah.
So I think it was really when I took a step back from that role and I started doing music full time, which was the following fall of 2024, September 2024. That's when I really, really started to dig into my craft. And I mean, I was spending 8-10 hours a day sometimes producing, sitting at my desk and just really, really diving into the knowledge of it all. So
Nice. It sounds like you just like had a ton of exposure quickly to actual like club setup systems, the gear, the equipment, the technical side of things, which gave you that skill set. And then once you decided to go all in, you just went all in with producing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was really fortunate. I think there are so many paths to. There is no one right path to a music career. There's so many different avenues and so many different ways to build it. And I was really fortunate with my exposure in the beginning to build that knowledge and just kind of also just build my connections as someone in the music industry. And then I was fortunate enough to have the time and the resources and the ability to take a step back from that and really dive into producing and treating my music as my full-time job. And I definitely think that was a really, really important part of my career because it's really hard to do something like, especially that's as technical and as endless as music production is, because it really truthfully is a dark hole. You can it is, you know, there are people who have been producing for 20 years who still tell you that they learn new things every day.
Yeah.
So to do something like that as just like an hour or two a week is very difficult if it's something you're trying to really learn quickly. So it was amazing for me to be able to take that step back and really dive into it head first. So yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the current state of the music industry?
I have so many thoughts on it. A lot.
All right.
Look, the bottom line of it is that there's a lot to say. I have a lot to say. You see all these people saying so much about the current state of the music industry. But the bottom line is that it's the same it always has been, in the fact that it's always been a business. It is a business. Since the beginning of music, it is a business that makes money. And it has always been that way. Now, that's not saying that it's not important to maintain the nature of it is creativity and the love of music. But I think a lot of people look at it in a negative light nowadays because they just see a lot more of that business side because it's so much more evident with the social media side of it and everything like that. But the bottom line is that I think if you think about it in the big picture of look at how many people were listening to and absorbing electronic music 10 years ago and look at how many people are doing it now. I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that more and more people are listening to it, more and more people are being exposed to it. And I think that there are some negative aspects, like in terms of the commercial nature of, you know, house music started as underground sound. It started as, you know, people in a house, in a warehouse, and you know, in Chicago and Detroit and listening to underground music. And it was very niche and it was considered illegal at times. And, you know, so like that is the nature of it. And I think in ways we've gotten away from that, obviously. But I still think that there are people out there and there are musicians out there who are pushing the correct agenda of music and really doing it for the love of music. And I think that, as always, there are types of music that are for some people and not for some people. And I think that sometimes it's easy as a musician to look at the industry and be upset with how it is. And you can point out certain artists and say, well, you know, they are only famous because of their social media, or they're only famous because other people are producing their music. And I think while some of that may be objectively true, as an artist myself, it is exhausting to focus on that. And I think what's more important is to focus on what you're doing and what you can control and just trying to be as authentic as you can.
Yeah. as a, an artist pursuing a career full time, how do you strike the balance between growing in this industry as a, somebody who this is your business, this is your livelihood, as you said, while also, staying true to the authenticity of your sound and like, the roots of what electronic music really came from?
I mean, it's a daily battle. It is a daily battle. It is something that I think all artists at some level struggle with, of any medium, any medium, any type of art. When you're doing something creative to support yourself financially, it puts a very different light on what you're doing. And I think that's something I struggled with a lot as a young artist. And I think that the best thing you can do is to wake up every day, and I kind of have these like words of affirmation to myself and just remind myself that I'm pursuing this music career because it is something I love and is something I enjoy. And while it is important to keep in mind that it is a business, like I said, and it does support me financially, that there are other things I could do to support myself financially. And if I want to do music because I love it, I have to stay true to at least the founding characteristics of who I am and what I think makes me feel good about pushing my music career. And there's an interesting like thought about it is like, I was terrible with social media when I first started. I was very pessimistic about it. I was like, I'm not going to use it. That's not me. I'm not the type of person who likes to like, get on camera. And then I had a buddy reach out to me and he sent me a reel that Moby made. And he's like, hey man, here's Moby, the father of modern electronic music, making a reel at 50 something years old to promote his new song.
Yeah.
If he can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And just like, it was kind of that moment where I was like, wow, like here's Jack, this, young, very up and coming DJ and artist who's barely started his career. And I have this like image of myself in my head and this ego where I'm like, oh, I can't do social media. And then my buddy sent me that and it just kind of woke me up. I'm like, look, Moby wasn't making a reel of him dancing in front of the camera. He was just making a reel of, I think it was about him making his song. And I'm like, okay, if the father of electronic music is out here using social media as a tool to push his music, which is authentic in a way because he's trying to reach the people that resonate with his music, then that's something I should be doing.
Sure.
And that was like a huge wake up moment for me, honestly.
Would you say that's like one of the more common misconceptions about the music business is that, you really should leverage it as a tool rather than trying to avoid it for some reason, social media?
I think a lot of people put a negative light on social media because look, there are a lot of circumstances out there that are using social media to push, businesses of all kinds that I don't personally resonate with, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it in an authentic way. And that doesn't mean that you can't use that tool to help you be a better artist. I truly do believe that. And I think, to be frank, anyone who's saying that they will not use social media is fooling themselves, to be honest with you. And that's not to say that I don't think every single person needs to be this outgoing persona. I don't buy into the idea that musicians, DJs, artists have to have this massive character and this massive persona. I think you have to be true to yourself. And I say this a lot. I'm like, if you're the type of artist who is quirky and funny and maybe a little nerdy, be that. Be yourself. Be who you are. Because guess what? There's a lot of people out there who are also quirky and funny and nerdy, and they're going to resonate with what you're doing even more because they're going to sense that you're being authentic to who you are. But if you're trying to put on this facade of being someone that you aren't, it's usually pretty obvious. Yeah. And I think, just like in all marketing nowadays and all businesses, I say this a lot to like fellow artists, and I say this a lot to myself to remind myself, is I'm not trying to get everyone to like me. I'm trying to get the specific amount of people, this niche community who would like me, to really, really like me and to be invested fans and invested parts of my project.
Right. How do you feel like, improving your own social media has helped you improve as an artist musically?
It's a couple things. I think the first thing is that I always helps remind myself that music is subjective. And I think you can ask so many artists this and they'll agree. The songs that I've made that have resonated the most with people are usually the songs that I think are my least favorite projects of myself. So
Almost everyone says
almost
that.
everyone.
Yeah.
So social media is a great tool to remind yourself that your image of your own music is heavily skewed. I mean, by the time I'm releasing a song, I've probably listened to the song 5,000 times. If you go take any of your favorite songs that you've ever had in your entire life and you listen to it 1,000 times, you're gonna be sick of it and you're gonna start hearing it differently than you heard it in the beginning. So I think that was a great thing for me as an artist to try to look at my own music as an objective fan and not as someone judging myself. And I think the second thing was that it helped me understand that as an artist, you are a brand. Like music is so subjective, especially house music, because I think it's very easy as musicians, DJs, you know, all of my friends, I always joke, all of my friends are DJs. Like all of my friends are either DJs, dating a DJ, in the music industry, or music managers. And I'm sure you have like a similar feeling where, you know, you're in a room of people and you can talk about house music in this really niche way and they'll all understand. But then you have to remind yourself that like, that's just because you're part of this niche community. And the reality is that if you compare the biggest numbers of, you know, John Summit's biggest songs and you add it together and you take one of like Billy Joel's songs, it doesn't even compare, you know? So it's like the majority of the world is still not listening to house music. So I think in that way, it helps remind me that all music is subjective. And at the end of the day, if people like who you are and like whatever you're selling as a brand, you know, your persona, your image, your likeness, then they're gonna be more willing to kind of start liking your music. And I can, as a fan of music, I remind myself of this all the time. Sometimes my favorite artists come out with songs. I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And then I think about it, I was like, well, I think if another artist released this song, I might not like it as much just because I'm really invested in this artist. And I think that's something important to remember.
Yeah, it's certainly part of the association with an artist.
Yeah,
right?
so it's all, look, like people are invested in who you are as a person, not just as your music that you're releasing.
Yeah, you know, speaking of releasing music, you have released music that's been supported by, you know, some big names in the house industry, in the house music space already in a short time span. I mean, it takes some producers, you know, years, if not decades, to get that kind of support with their music. So, you know, what do you think it is about, you know, your ability to produce and like your likeness that is giving you this opportunity so quickly?
I think there's a lot of factors, and I think it's, you know, I think it's important to remember that in regards to social media as well, is that perception isn't always reality. In that, you know, it's amazing. Yes, you know, I've had some artists that I look up to and that I think are doing amazing things in the community right now, playing my music, and that was amazing. It was an amazing experience for me. It was humbling and just an awesome experience. And I think a lot of it came from just really hard work, honestly. Like there's really no shortcut to it. There's no secret to it. I sat down at my computer and I studied the people who I thought were doing things that I wanted to do. And I literally sat down every day and I listened to their music and I broke it down like you would break down tape from a football game if you were a football player. Like I literally sat there and I meticulously studied them. And, you know, when you're first starting, you try to just emulate them because that's, you know, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And then eventually you learn and you start progressing it into your own sound. And, you know, and that was really how I started. And there really is no shortcut to it. It wasn't some secret sauce. It wasn't some secret YouTube video I watched. I sat down and I mean, in the first year of producing, I probably easily spent, you know, 1,000 hours doing, you know, producing. And then the second part of it is, and the reason why I say perception isn't reality is like, you know, not all of them, but a couple of them were also like, you know, songs that were, I think would have gotten supported by other people anyways. But the reason that they were able to get supported in the first place was because of a personal connection. For instance, like with Gummy, when he first played my song, I met him in person. And I met him and we were talking about music and I showed him one of my songs. He said, send it to me. And then the next day I woke up and he played it at DC 10 Ibiza.
That's
And
what a dream.
And that's a really important part of it, is being a part of the community. You have to be a part of the community. If you're wishing to grow your own brand and you're inside of a community, but you're existing outside of that community, you're not really going to get the full picture of it. You're not really going to be taking advantage of it as much as you can. And the last thing I'll say is, like, I think to all other people is, when I was a young artist and Mitigami or someone first played my song, it was amazing for me. But someone playing your song doesn't change your career at the end of the day. You know, it's like, it was an amazing milestone for me and it's something I'll always remember. But at the end of the day, building yourself takes years. And just like when I said there's no shortcuts to production, there's no shortcuts to music either.
Yeah.
One person playing your song, one person supporting your song isn't gonna do it.
Yeah.
It takes years and years and years of building, you know, your community to do that.
It's still like an amazing milestone.
It's like, I don't want to play it like it was an amazing milestone. And it was also, I think as a young artist, it's really difficult sometimes. You're making this music in your studio and your apartment and your laptop, whatever you're doing. And it's hard to imagine it on these big stages because, you know, as fans, we can all say, like, when you go and you see these shows with these massive productions and these huge sound systems, it changes the way you experience the music. 100%.
That's why you go to a live event.
100%. And that's why hearing my song for the first time, and that's why I think going out and experiencing those events as a fan is important for my career as well, and important for all musicians' careers, to see how the context of the music, the context of where you're absorbing this music changes the music. And it really can help you imagine in your head the type of music and the type of message you're trying to get across with whatever song you're making at the time.
Someone were to come up to you today and ask you, say, hey, I want to start producing, I want to start releasing my own tracks. They don't have any experience producing yet. Maybe they've seen a DAW once in their life, DJ'd a few times, whatever. What's the one biggest piece of advice you would give that person?
Make sure you love it first.
Yeah.
That's really like the bottom line is, you know, I could give them a million tips and I do have a lot of like things that I think are great ideas to focus on when you're first starting. But the bottom line is make sure you love it first.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, especially around COVID, right after COVID, a lot of young people started seeing this exorbitant lifestyle of the DJ.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I want to be a DJ.
Yeah.
And that's all great. But like I said earlier, perception isn't always reality. And
hardly
as much as it's super fun to look at these DJs playing in front of all these people, you don't see how difficult the career really is.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, unless you absolutely love it and it's something that you wake up every day and it's what you think about, then it isn't something you should be doing. Because regardless of whether you're the most talented musician in the world or you're just starting out or you have a team full of people or you're by yourself, at some point you will want to quit. At some point, I'm serious, like at some point.
I'm laughing because I've been there.
At some point you will, I mean, this is all artists, at some point you will wake up and be like, man, this is tough. Like when you're pushing your art and you're being that vulnerable to the public eye, it's really difficult. So unless you really love it, it's going to be hard to push through those times. So that's what I would stick with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that have really stood out to me that you've said so far. And, you know, showing up, being in the community has been a very common thread in a lot of interviews we've had. And just like show up, because that's a great way to give to the community, you know, loving it from the start. Yeah. Because if you don't love doing it, you will stop doing it.
100%.
And just putting in the time. Just put it, like it's a long game. You can speed it up by putting in more time earlier on, but it's still, you got to put in the time.
I think one of the biggest things, I have a lot of friends who are agents, managers, scouters, talent bookers. And I think the first thing they look for when they're meeting a new possible client or talking to an artist is a big red flag is if they say, I want to blow up. I want to be overnight success. And it's so easy to look at other artists and think, oh man, like I didn't hear about this guy last year and now he's headlining Coachella. I'm like, well, maybe you didn't hear about him, but he or she has been grinding behind the scenes for at least 5-10 years.
Yeah,
I
fully.
mean, look at all the artists that are touring massive right now. Fisher's in his late 40s, Carl Cox is in his
Most of
50s,
them are older.
Solomon's in his 50s. They're all, it takes a really long time to get to the point where you've built enough of a fan base to be a touring musician.
Yeah, and just put the reps in and been in the scene long enough for sure. Let's go into your creative process a little bit, because I'd love to learn more about, you know, how you did develop your own sound while producing. You know, at first, you know, you took influences from certain artists, tried to kind of mimic and replicate that, which is how most of us start.
Yeah.
What is your creative process like now?
Lately, I've been really trying to push myself to not conform to a set practice of sitting down and making the type of music that I feel comfortable making. I think it's very easy as a young producer to, you start making a specific style and you get a lot of reps at it and you get really good at making that specific style. And then you start sitting down and you kind of just start regurgitating the same things, which, look, you can go listen to any artist, you know, who's big nowadays. And I guarantee you, if you just listen to a couple of their songs, you'll see similarities.
Sure.
And that's good in some ways, because that's you developing your sound. But it also can be detrimental when you're allowing it to box you in. I personally don't buy into the idea that I need to have one sound and stick to that sound. I think you need to have an identity, a sonic identity.
Okay.
But I don't think as an artist you need to stick to one sound. And I think that that's evident if you go and listen to, pick any artist and listen to the music they made when they were first starting, and now listen to the music that they're making now. I guarantee you it, on some level, is different.
Yeah.
So my creative process lately has been really just trying to push myself. And I sit down and I've been using a lot of, like, lately I've been just loving disco. And so I take like some type of sample from like a 1970s disco song, and like it could literally be as simple as like one tiny little string element. And I'll base my whole idea of the song around this small element. And honestly, talking about going back to community, I think one of my things that I've been really pushing myself to do lately is work with other artists. I have a couple collabs coming out, and I think when you work with fellow artists, especially fellow artists who are in the similar state as you are, you know, building and coming up, and it, one, helps you build that community, and two, helps you see things in a way that you wouldn't normally see it. Like, there's so much fun to, like, you know, I'll be working on the song for 20 minutes and then someone else will hop in and they'll pick one sound, and we can all just feed off of each other's creativity, and it really makes it so much fun. And I have this joke with like my friends. I say, oh, it's like, make music fun again. You know, it's like, it's so easy to like sit down and think about music in this technical way. We have such amazing technology nowadays with the, you know, I could produce an entire song on my laptop with nothing else. And that's great in some ways, but I also think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, it's not a technical job, it's a creative job. And one of my favorite sayings ever was from a teacher of mine who told me that no amount of technical skill will ever fix a poor creative idea. So you could be the most amazing producer ever, and you can make everything sound so good and so clean, but unless the creative idea is good, it's just going to be polished. That's all it's going to be.
My first place my head went when you said that is, well, so AI won't completely take over humans, but that's a different story.
That's a different topic.
That's a different topic for another day. We could go there, but yeah, I think that's such a cool way to start a song. It's just like, all right, let me take this one hit or this one note or this one strings section, like one beat, and build a whole track around that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
that's
a cool way to do it.
The history of house music and hip hop and house music.
Yeah,
it's all based sampling. It's sampling based.
Yeah.
So I think it's really nice to kind of just go back to that. Remember that, like, that's how.
But still make it your own.
Still make it your own for sure.
I'm curious, not to cut you off there, but what you mean in the difference between your sound and your identity when you were going back to that, because that's something that like. What's the difference?
Maybe it's a hot take by me. Maybe it's something that other artists might not agree with, but I don't know. I have a lot of other fellow young artists reach out to me and be like, oh, like, I don't want to release music yet. I don't like know what my sound is. I'm like, nobody knows what their sound is. I mean, like, look, maybe there's like the the 1% of the population who are these like naturally born gifted musicians who like, you know, like the Ed Sheerans of the world who like hear the song in their head and they can just hear it in their head and like put it on paper.
Yeah.
But most of us are just throwing paint at the wall and we're just sitting down, we're having fun, we're messing around, and it's like the way you build your sound and your identity is through years and years of producing music that, you know, I'm not saying that like one day I'm gonna produce drum and bass and the next day I'm gonna produce house. All of it is within the general realm of house.
Sure.
But, you know, there are times where I've made tracks like as a young artist, like, you know, I was really focused on making club oriented tracks because guess what? Like, what's the best way to gain recognition is you have other DJs who are these big DJs playing big sets, play your club music.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I also really resonate with the more melodic side of house. And I really love stuff that slows down a little bit and gets you deeper into the groove. And so lately I've been trying to experiment with that a little bit. So I think it's less that you do need a sound, you do need an identity, but that doesn't mean you have to be boxed in and stick to one specific thing.
Let's talk about like your performance style, you know, from production into actually DJing too. Like, do you plan or prepare a lot of sets? Does it matter depending on the venue or like how big the event is or the space? Like what's it like for you leading up to and then during an actual performance?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely prep. I think there's a difference between prepping and like planning. Okay. I've never planned a set in my life. I've never like put together like 10 songs and like, this is the song I'm gonna play. But I think prepping is very important. You know, again, to get back to the point of I open for a wide array of styles of musicians, and I play a wide array of venues that require different styles and different techniques of how I play. So I definitely prepare, and I help myself, you know, get prepped with listening back in my old music. You know, I have so much music in my library that sometimes I love to just go back. Man, I haven't played this song in like a year. Like I want to go play this song. Night. Yeah, it's amazing. It's so much fun to find these gems. So really the way I start is just by finishing whatever music I'm working on currently so I can test it out. I think getting over the nervousness of playing your own music as a young artist is very important because here, like we were talking about earlier, hearing your music outside of your music studio or outside of your headphones is very important to see how people react to it, to see how it sounds on a bigger system. So that's the first thing I do. Then I just generally prep. I listen to new music. I go back, I find some old music that I think is going to fit the vibe of the night. You know, I put together let's say I'm playing for 2 hours. Sometimes I put together a folder that has 6 hours of music. So I'm just kind of generally, and I always am playing outside of that. Yeah. But the way I play is, it's generally my favorite types of sets are longer sets. I like to play for at least 3 hours because I really do enjoy, like I said, while I do love playing high energy club music, I really love the part of the set where I can kind of bring it down for a minute and start playing a little bit more into the grooving melodic sections. And that type of mixing is really fun for me. I love when I can like 3-deck or 4-deck mix sometimes and just really focus on the groove. Yeah. So yeah.
Everybody who bring on is like, yeah, I would love to play for 3 or 4 hours every time.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean,
you get to tell a better story.
Exactly. And it's also just like, when you're playing for an hour, you're playing, you know, depending on how fast, 10, 12 tracks. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I have 15,000 songs in my library and now I have to pick 10 of them. Yeah. It's like, you know, and especially for me, like, regardless of the set, the first 2 or 3 songs, I'm like really just feeling out the crowd. I'm seeing I'm seeing like what their reactions are. And I haven't even decided where I'm going to go yet with the set. So, and if you're playing an hour, when you're 3 songs in, you're almost halfway done. So it's like,
what's an ideal venue space and size like for you? Like, where do you like to perform the most?
It really, I always say that, like, I think to me, it doesn't matter if I'm playing to 10 people or 1,000 people, as long as it's a good room with a decent sound system and a crowd who is there to dance and is there to enjoy themselves. That's all I care about. I always say that. I think, you know, living in New York City, people always ask me, you know, friends who come there, oh, what's the best club and what's the best place in New York City? I'm like, it just depends on the night. I think sometimes there are bars in Lower East Side with 15 people in them that are the best club in New York City that night because those 15 people are just super, super locked in and the DJ is really flowing and having a good time. And it's like, just depends. But yeah, for me, like decent sound system, good equipment, a place that focuses on the music and not the scene of it all. Yeah. And just people who are willing to to listen to stuff that they wouldn't normally listen to.
Yeah, we are so lucky to have access to so much variety in that sense here. Any dance floor pet peeves that just really get you going?
Yeah, I mean, like, specifically as the DJ, if you are in the DJ booth and like next to me and you're yapping really, really loud, just go have a conversation somewhere else.
The DJ booth is not the place for that.
Yeah. And then as far as the dance floor goes, honestly, just I think we should get back to where the DJ isn't like the focus. Like I feel like all the time people are always like reaching for me and trying to like do things with me. I'm like, the fun is out there. Like I promise you, it's more fun out there than it is whatever I'm doing up here. Like I'm just staring, I'm working here.
Yeah.
You know, so yapping and flash photography, I think, are my two biggest ones.
Yeah. Has anyone ever handed you something like really weird?
I can't think of one specifically, but if you ever want to get on my good side, as like someone who's coming to see me DJ, bring me like gummy worms to the DJ booth.
Okay.
It's always a good snack.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
Gummy worms.
It's a good snack.
Is that on your rider?
It's not on my rider, but I do, especially when I play longer. I'm not like a big drinker, so I just like to like have something to like nibble on, and it's fun. And the little sugar boost gets you going.
It helps.
Yeah,
it helps you stand up a little longer without the back of
yeah.
it.
Oh man.
I'm curious, where did the name Jasa come from?
It's honestly just my initials. It's the first two initials of my first name, and then my middle initial and my last initial.
Gotcha. Simple as that.
I just was like, you know, you can sit and try to think of an interesting name forever. And I was like, I was sitting there and I was like, oh man, like I just want something simple that's easy to say, that goes on a flyer nice and small, and is one that like, you know, isn't super common, so I don't have the same name as other people. And that was just like the easiest one I came up with.
Where is Jasa in 10 years time? Who's he become?
Oh, honestly, in an ideal world, I always say, you know, my end all goal for my music career is really just that I am staying true to myself. I'm making music that I enjoy, that others resonate with, and that I'm able to live a happy, healthy life and support myself. Whether that means I'm playing 2 gigs a month or 150 gigs, you know, a year, or whatever it is, whatever that is in between, as long as I'm happy, healthy, I'm making the music that I want to make, and it resonates with people, and I can support myself and my family, that's really all that matters to me. I think I don't really care so much about the fame or any of that. Like I always say, like I think some of the most rewarding sets aren't those massive stage sets. They're like the little club sets. Yeah. And so as long as I'm able to do that, I'll be pretty happy.
What's been the biggest challenge so far in your career?
I think the biggest challenge so far in my career was about 6 months ago. I was heavy into my learning process of producing, and I was starting to make some pretty good music, but I started to feel the financial burden of being an artist. And look, I left a stable job with a good income where I was, you know, happy and had plenty of money to live my life and live happily to pursue this career. And I wouldn't take back a single second of it. I'm extremely grateful and happy that I made that decision. But there are definitely days where I woke up and I'm like, man, like, you know, what happens when this doesn't work out? If this doesn't work out, what happens if, you know, I don't have enough money to support myself? And as a creative, that's a really difficult position to be in. Like there's no more of a creative block than trying to sit down and then having to think about like, okay, well, like what I'm creating right now has to help support me financially.
Yeah.
And the way I got through it was by expanding my career in other ways, and honestly, just working really hard and expanding my networking so I could have other sources of income while I'm focusing on my music career. And I think that's one of the biggest advice I give to anyone who asks me if they're starting out. I'm like, don't force it to be your financial, you know, support until it has to be. If you are able to produce and you're living at home as a young person, or you have a job that allows you the free time to still produce and you feel like you're doing well doing that, stick with that until you really feel that moment, that precipice moment where you're like, okay, this is the moment to switch gears and go full in. Because once you do, it creates this whole feeling around it that it changes the way you look at your art. And I think it's that is what I've really struggled with. And I just got through it by like relying on friends and family and pushing myself as an individual to work hard and support myself.
That is a real thing in this world.
Yeah, look, it's a reality for sure.
Yeah. Take us through, you actually just released a track today with Jasa, yeah?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just came out today.
What's it called? Take us through it.
It's called My Mind. It's out on Another Effing Party, which is a good friend of mine, Kozlo's local Brooklyn record label. Yeah, it's an awesome track. I met Chosky through a friend of a friend and came over. We made the beginnings of the song in like a couple hours, and then we finished it remotely. And yeah, it's like definitely, I think one of the tracks of mine that probably tailors to like big stages more than the rest of my music. It's like really high energy.
Yeah. He plays a lot of high energy stuff.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. But yeah, super excited about it. We just shot some content for it yesterday, which was super fun. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do any weird dances in front of the camera?
No, we do. Luckily, I had a good buddy in town, and we shot some fun little creative stuff, literally right around the corner from my apartment.
Nice.
So it was perfect.
What's one piece of equipment or software that you cannot live without when you're producing?
This is such like a nerd niche statement.
Oh, I love it.
My saying is like, as far as effects go, that delay is everything. Like a delay can be a reverb, a delay can be a flanger, a delay can be... So basically, my saying is that like delays are the secret sauce to almost everything. You can do pretty much limitless creativity with just the most simple stock delay that you can find. So that's I guess the best answer I can give.
Is that like you just use a stock
Ableton delay?
Yep. Add some ping pong in there too. It helps.
Yeah.
Sweet. Any non-music essentials? You don't bring gummy worms, but anything else that you always bring with you to a gig?
Earplugs. I try really, really hard to play every gig with my earplugs in. I always say to everyone, I'm like, your ears are your instrument. And I mean, look at how many artists we have right now who are dealing with ear tinnitus, and it's a reality, especially with the systems we have nowadays. The systems we have are insane. Yeah. As fans too, you should always have your earplugs. Earplugs, gum, chapstick, and like 5 USBs. I'm like a freak about it. Like I never I never leave it to one. I always have backups on backups on backups.
Fair enough. Sounds like that might be from experience.
Yeah, I mean, knock on wood, I've actually never had a really bad experience. I had one where like one USB was being weird, but then I had the other one.
That's why you have 5.
But yeah, but I've never had one where I couldn't play a gig, but I've had so many friends who have.
Dude, one of my friends, he was on last year. He told me he played at a club, in a basement, and like he brought like 4 USBs and none of them would work. Yeah. Like the CJs wouldn't work. He had to end up plug in his laptop. Like he brought his laptop.
Good for him. Yeah,
always back up USBs.
100%.
Any unendorsed, specific earplugs or gum or anything that you're just like I go to?
Earplugs are I went to the ear, like you go to the ear doctor and you get custom molds. Yeah. I think as a DJ or as a musician, it's very important. Because, look, like as a fan, the stock ones you can get on, any of the brands really they're just fine as long as they, protect like up to like 120 decibels or something like that. But as a musician, it's like you have to be comfortable in them. And, I know why so many of my friends who are musicians don't wear earplugs. They say that they can't hear with them on, and it's hard to, you have to be able to hear what you're doing. And if you take the money and the time to go get custom ones, it'll help you out. So
a couple more questions for you here. Any other upcoming releases, gigs, projects, events that you have in the next few months that you're really excited about, want to share with us?
Yeah, so I have another release in the beginning of April with another Brooklyn label called Beats on Time, which is Saqib's label, who is an amazing artist who I look up to a lot. Super excited about that. It's actually going to be 1 track in April and I think another track in June. The one that's coming out in April is called Missed a Chance. It was supported by Yamaguchi, who's a friend of mine, and Notre Dame, who's an artist I really look up to. So super excited about that one. And then me and my friend Kozlo have another song coming out on his label at the end of April, which I'm really, really excited about. It's called Don't Sweat. It's really interesting. We're good friends, and he started pushing himself to record his own vocals recently, and I even got on there and did a little bit of my own vocals, and It's definitely like a different kind of sound from my usual stuff. Still on par with like, you know, my style, but it's this really interesting, I think, take that, you know, we've been talking about a lot as fellow artists and friends who collaborate a lot, is that it's kind of like what we would call the meshing between like indie rock and indie house. So it's the drums and the style and the kind of like punkness of indie rock with the danceability of house. And
Nice.
I think it's really interesting. I'm really excited to kind of see where this niche new subgenre takes us.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, I'll play the song after this.
Sweet,
for sure.
sweet. Where can our listeners follow you and stay up to date with what you're up to?
Best place is Instagram. My link tree is on my Instagram. You'll see all my upcoming shows, all my upcoming releases, and then my website as well.
And then the last thing, it's really been a pleasure to have you over here.
It's been awesome.
We always have our guests finish this one statement at the end of every interview. To me, house music is...
To me, house music is love. Like just sharing love, enjoying it, the love of music, the love of dancing. I think if you've ever been on a really good dance floor, you'll agree with me and you'll feel that.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to that latest interview on Tiny Table Radio. It would help a lot if you hit that subscribe button now so I can bring on more guests and keep this show going. So hit that subscribe button now and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the set.